Hello and welcome. Today we're going to make the most delicious simple lo mein you have ever had. We're going to start by turning our burner to medium-high heat and putting a 3/4 filled pot of water with 2 tablespoons of salt on one burner, on the other side having your wok sitting there ready to go. We're going to take our vegetables and cut them into 1-inch slices, starting with our white button mushrooms, moving on to a jalapeno per taste. This is obviously optional if you enjoy the heat, and if you're like me, then of course you'll eat that random piece of jalapeno as well. Next, we're going to be taking our green onions, cutting off the end deader side of the stalks, starting fresh by cutting those whites and cutting some of the greens as well. We're going to keep these somewhat separated for usage in different parts of the recipe later on. Next, we'll grab our red bell pepper. We're going to julienne this into a series of thin slices, which will go with our other vegetables here to be used later on. Finally, our good friend garlic. This is going to give us the flavor. In this case, we got fresh garlic cloves and we minced them ourselves. Of course, you can buy your own pre-minced garlic if that is easier for you, but there's so much more advantages to having your freshly minced garlic like we are doing here. Gather all of your vegetables up, making sure that you clean up your area. Very important, keep things nice and tidy. Take those extra vegetable parts and dispose of them or save them for stocks for later on. Once we have that vegetables cleaned off, now it's time for the noodles. And very important that we get good quality noodles. These are locally sourced noodles from one of our partners. We take these noodles and put them into that 3/4 filled pot of water with salt we started boiling earlier on. We're going to cook these until they are approximately 85% done, constantly stirring them at the same time. We want them to be relatively done on the outside, but a little firm on the inside, till we finally drain them in a sink and then flash hit them with a bit of cold water to stop the cooking process, and leaving those aside for later. And next we have our sauce, starting with a 1/4 cup of room temperature water, adding in a 1/4 cup equal parts soy sauce, about 2 tablespoons of sesame seed oil, and then a light dash of pepper to the sauce as per taste. And finally, a tablespoon of ground or fresh ginger. In this case, we used ground ginger simply because of the ease and time, as well as avoiding chunks and too much flavor in our main dish. Then we'll go back to the wok, turn our burner to medium-high, add a tablespoon of sesame seed oil in there as well, and begin to cook the whites of our green onions from earlier. We're going to sweat these out like we would normal white onions. This is what they are facilitating in this recipe. Then we're going to add our white button mushrooms we sliced earlier, cooking those and moving those in the wok until tender. Followed by our red bell peppers, doing the same rule again, keeping them moving in the wok until cooking them until they are nice and tender. Finally, we're going to add in our flavor items here. This is those optional jalapenos if you cut those earlier, as well as the garlic we're going to add in together, keeping everything moving still in the wok, making sure everything's nice and cooked, and releasing all that aromatic flavor coming from those jalapenos as well as that minced garlic. Now we take our strained noodles that we had earlier, that we have coated in some of that sesame seed oil, and we're going to add those in as well as the sauce and stir fry everything together, keeping it moving, keeping it consistently in motion on high heat for 5 minutes. Now that we have our vegetables and noodles appropriately cooked after that 5 minutes on high heat, we are going to grab our protein. In this case, we have a ribeye that we have marinated for about 4 hours in sabas, a yogurt marinade sauce. It has Eastern flavor with a Western twist, and it is just so good and brings out the flavor in that meat that we want in this delicious lo mein. We thinly slice this steak and add it in with our noodles and vegetables, cooking until about a medium rare or to your personal taste, depending on how you like your meat cooked. After you have your protein thoroughly cooked in the dish, you're going to want to add in those green onions from earlier. These are the stalks, the green parts, the traditional garnish. Adding those in and letting that cook just slightly longer. Finally, once the steak is to temp, you can celebrate and plate your dish on your appropriate plating ware and finish with a generous garnish of sesame seeds, all done in slow motion before finally admiring it for a few moments and enjoying.